Good morning, good evening to all. Yesterday we had an interesting discussion on strategies to decarbonize transport sector. And some of the speakers were there previously in the session yesterday. Today we are here with an illustrious lineup of speakers to discuss on a topic electrification of heavy duty vehicles and an emergent economic opportunity. And for that, we have a lineup of, as I mentioned, this illustrious speakers from across the globe. We have to begin with Mr. IV Rao, who is a visiting senior fellow at TERI. We also have Mr. Siddarthan, and before that, we have a special address from Mr. Sudhendu J Sinha, who is the advisor Niti Aayog. And in the panel discussion, we have Ms Divya Sharma, Dr. Cristiano, Mr. Ruchir, Dr. Anup, Mr. Clay, and Mr. Vineet. So I'll before wasting any time, I'll just request Mr. IV Rao to start the opening session with the background and welcome remarks. Over to you, sir.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here for this thematic track about electrification of HDVs as a part of the prestigious World's Sustainable Development Summit. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Yesterday, in thematic track about strategies to decarbonize transport sector, multi-sectoral approach, most of the speakers highlighted the importance of electrification of HDVs for achieving decarbonization. As per Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the Indian logistics sector contributes 14% to the GDP and provides livelihood to more than 22 million people. As per International Transport Forum, India has low vehicle numbers in transport sector. SDVs have a high share of 53% in the total emissions from the transport sector, accounting for 65 million tons of CO2 emissions. It is estimated that electrification of trucks and delivery vehicles would lead to savings worth 97 billion in oil imports and 7 gigatons of carbon emissions by 2050. Hence, decarbonization of HDVs is crucial for moving forward, but India does not have any policy supporting the electrification of HDVs at the moment. The major challenges in electrification of electric vehicles is the high energy demand to propel larger vehicles, therefore demanding a big battery assembly and with a very high battery capacity. The lifespan of batteries is much less compared to the lifespan of HDVs, so there will be high demand for batteries for replacement too. Several countries worldwide, especially Europe, are researching various methods and innovations to electrify HDVs. Germany, Sweden, Norway, and the UK are testing e-highway technology that supplies trucks with electric drives on heavily frequented stretches of highways via an overhead cable. Finland is experimenting on retrofitting old heavy-duty vehicles with electric powertrains. And battery electric vehicles for heavy-duty application is also slowly evolving. There are multiple ZEV technologies evolving for SDV segment, including fuel cell electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and e-traction, etc. In India at present, very e-trucks are in operation and few e-buses are used by some state transport corporations. With FAME 2 implementation and electrification policy released by different states has triggered a lot of action in two-wheeler and three-wheeler electrification. Electric two-wheelers in recent months in some states have crossed 10% penetration in the segment. However, all these vehicles or from new manufacturers, and existing IC two-wheeler manufacturers have not launched many EVs. FAME 2 does not offer any incentive for electric heavy-duty vehicles, either for users or for manufacturers. Unlike electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers which can be charged at home, electric heavy-duty vehicles need charging infrastructure to be in place for seamless operation of HDVs on road. The panel can discuss about options for India to move towards zero emissions from HDVs and key challenges and opportunities and what regulatory interventions are required, and also whether India can benchmark any country for this. Or should India take different approach for different locations based on the conditions in those areas? We will first have a special address by Mr. Sudhendu Sinha, who is the advisor infrastructure connectivity and transport and electric mobility in Niti Aayog, the think tank of Government of India. He plays an active role in promoting electrification of automobiles. He is a good supporter of TERI initiatives, and he is always with us in any discussions. And I am very privileged to welcome eminent personalities who would be participating in the panel discussion, to be moderated by Mr. Siddarthan Balasubramania, Senior Advisor, Principal Strategist, Climate Works Foundation. A brief introduction of the moderator and the panelists. Siddarthan supports Climate Work and several other foundations that are committed to deploy philanthropic resources to India to advance India's development goals, particularly related to clean energy and climate change. He comes with rich experience in different countries. In the panel, we have Divya Sharma, Executive Director, Climate Group. Divya Sharma is an international climate and urban development expert, specializing in climate resilience and urban development planning with almost 20 years experience operating extensively with national, state and municipal governments, regional, national and international development agencies, and foundations and international research community and academia. She is on a number of prestigious advisory positions on international and national networks for sustainable development, as well as international and national level climate change issues. We have Dr. Cristiano Tacana, Director, Drive to Zero, CalSTART. He is a transportation and environmental engineer with about 15 years experience in the transportation industry, with a mission to reduce climate change and air pollution by cleaning the transportation sector. He is an expert in design, modeling, and evaluation of transportation emissions, reduction strategies, and policies at CalSTART. Leads Commercial Vehicle Drive to Zero program, which aims to accelerate the uptake of zero-emission trucks and buses worldwide. We have with us Mr. Ruchir Shukla, Director, Electric Mobility Program, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Mr. Ruchir Shukla leads Shakti Electric Mobility Program. Ruchir has over 2 decades of valuable experience in engineering and project management. His experience in electric mobility domain includes transportation systems, connectivity, charging infrastructure, and interfacing it with renewable and clean energy options. We have Mr. Anup Gandhi-Vadekar, Program Officer, Environment, Hewlett Foundation. Dr. Anup is a Program Officer for Hewlett Foundation's Environment Program, where he leads global strategic grant making on clean power and transportation, as well as climate funding in India. Prior to Hewlett, Anup was with International Council on Clean Transportation, and I know him for about 2 decades when he was a regular expert speaker in most of the conferences when we were still evolving our emission roadmap in India. He was the passenger vehicle program director for ICCT, where his work focused on reducing air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions via new fuel efficiency and greenhouse gas emission standards for passenger vehicles. In many countries like US, Europe, India, China, and other global regions. We have Clay Stranger, RMI India Managing Director, India Program. Clay is a Managing Director at RMI, where he leads the India Program through diverse engagements with public and private sectors. He works to build confidence and commitment towards India's clean energy targets. Clay serves as an advisor to India's central and state governments on clean energy policy and technology. He also co-founded the Urban Mobility Lab in India, a platform that supports a replicable process for identifying, integrating, and implementing mobility solutions in leading geographies called lighthouse cities. We also have Mr. Vinit Srivastava, COO, Infra Prime Logistics. He is an auto industry veteran with 23 plus years of experience in sourcing, supply chain, and vendor development. At IPLT, Mr. Vinit is the key man responsible for developing key partner relations with electric drivetrain specialists, vehicle integration experts, and battery cell and pack manufacturers. He also oversees procurements and ensures that IPLT's parts are benchmarked against the best-in-class specifications. He had led strategic sourcing with various auto manufacturers like Tata's, TVS Group, American Axle, Sona Steering, etc. Before we start with the panel discussion, we will have a presentation by Mr. Sharif Qamar for context setting. We'll first have a special address by Mr. Sudhendu Sinha. Over to you, Mr. Sudhendu.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rao. And Sharif and Anup, we were together yesterday. Ruchir and Clay, they are always by side of Niti. In all our initiatives there, we are together. And of course, Dr. Cristiano, Mr. Subramaniam and Sumania and Ms Divya. All the illustrious names in the field of electric mobility. Now, as far as sustainability is concerned, government's commitment, I reiterated the same yesterday, that is something very, very profound, very emphatic, very clear, very pronounced. And yes, as far as freight transportation is concerned, one appreciates that the majority of fuel consumption, fossil fuel consumption, goes over there. That is why that needs to be, again, the transformation has to be there. Now, in freight segments, of course, the low density ones, they have been taken care of. In the sense, of course, I'm alluding to n-mile delivery vehicles, they are being taken care of. And of course, we have got a dedicated Shuni campaign, which is trying to kind of support these n-mile delivery vehicles, and we see that it is pulling off well. Now, when it comes to heavy duty, you rightly said that no support has been given in FAME, though charging infrastructure does have a support system there. There is a PLI for advanced chemistry cell, but heavy duty vehicles, that does not figure in there. Probably one of the, as far as the understanding that the fossil fuel based heavy duty vehicles, they need to be transitioned to cleaner energy based movement, that goes without saying. I mean, Niti Aayog has supported it in a number of reports, number of deliberations, wherever we could. Now, as far as creating a support system, by that, of course, I mean the incentive structure from the government side, it needs certain clarity. Now, why it has not been there, if you see, then till a year ago or so, it was not clear whether the heavy duty vehicles, I mean, if I say that the vehicles as such, they were not in the, they were still at the say TRL technology readiness level of say 7 or 8 kind of thing. If there was not clarity whether those vehicles will for sure be based on electric and not hydrogen. Okay. So another option came of hydrogen. Among the electric also, alternate options came. One was that it should be based it should be a stationary battery systems with charging options on the highways. That was one. There was yet another one with that. Why not have the way the railway systems and railway tracks have? Why do we not have a kind of say OHE based electricity support to these vehicles? So that was another loop that came in. So if I might say that on this point, clarity is still, I mean, the kind of surety, the kind of comfort that probably government requires, that is still missing. That has to be brought into it. As far as the advantages are there, that goes without saying. Now we have got different examples in different geography. Germany, of course, they have got a different example. Similarly, in the same Europe where we have examples where they say that, okay, heavy duty vehicles can still continue to fossil fuel. So that option is also there. So once that clarity is there, definitely, I mean, I don't see what would be the reason why government should shy away from supporting these vehicles, both to the manufacturers, both to support the demand incentives for the demand creation and the entire ecosystem, if I might say. I see that people keep on coming to me, those who are working in this in the heavy duty sector, they keep on coming to me. But quite at times when I am asking questions based on slightly technical ones, I see that somehow they are not able to convince us beyond doubt. So maybe that as a sequel, as a kind of fallout of these kind of deliberations, we are able to come to a conclusive position that, okay, this is doable, it can be done. It is already up and running in this particular area. One could go and see for sure. And, you know, when we talk of the trucks, then truck has got a different definitions. For Europe, it is a different definition. For us, it is a different definition. For us, when we say truck or a freight vehicle, simply by that we mean a 10-tonner. At the least should be that 10-tonner. Where in European systems, truck could be the lighter ones also, and they are also kind of taken to be the trucks. So these clarities are definitely required, and once that is there, then probably that would be the right time to take it forward. In fact, I am looking for an opportunity where such clarity comes to us absolutely beyond doubt, so that we are able, because once Niti Aayog itself is not convinced, how could it be possible that we take it to the government and tell them that, you see, this is a wonderful option, we should be going in for that. And this can be seen, it can be, I mean, it is not an experimental stage as such, it is up and running. So probably that sort of clarity is required. And I'm sure that this particular session and sessions like this, and the TERI is also working. TERI, I've seen that TERI has been after this, Sharif and his team have been after this thing, that how to take this heavy duty vehicles, how to kind of migrate them to cleaner fuel systems. So definitely if such thinking through, such clarity comes, please get back to us. We are here to be a kind of, we can together work out a system that how to take it forward. We know how to incentivize it. We all know, we have got the experience on that. We know how to incentivize both the manufacturing, how to create the demand, how to nudge the R&D people, how to go about awareness. All those things are doable, see. But the point is, until that base clarity comes to us, would be difficult. Maybe that after, as a fallout to this, as a result of this seminar, it could be there. And I must congratulate the entire team of TERI, because I am watching that the entire, in the transport, whatever themes, all the thematic tracks that you have chosen, they are very, very relevant, and they support resilience, they support sustainability, they support a better world. So congratulations to the entire team, TERI team. And I'm sure that the panel discussion that is there, Clay is always by our side. He is the one who is creating all the state EV policies, and he knows that what pains we have to undergo in creating, in kind of convincing the states that it's time for them to take to such policies, and it is giving good results. So I'm sure that if the good points come to us, and if you have got systems in place which can be exhibited, which can be explained to us, and rather I would say if it can be shown to us, we are ready to go over wherever you want us to. If we can see it for ourselves that the system is doable, definitely that would be there. As far as creation of charging infrastructure along the highways are concerned, government has already decided that they are going in for it. So that would be, charging infrastructure would be there, but of course, when it comes to charging of the heavy duty vehicles, maybe the kind of charging infrastructure that we have, that will have to be altered. It can't be based on AC. Similarly, it can't be of lower kV ones. It has to be a very, very, say 100 kV plus kind of thing we'll have to create. So thank you, Mr. Rao. Thank you for inviting me on this occasion. And I'm sure that TERI, Sharif and his team will come out. Ruchir is there. So you will come out with some suggestions, some solid suggestions that can be taken forward from our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot for joining in at such a short notice, and I understand that you have a busy schedule, but we'll request you to stay on for at least few moments when we present the context-setting presentation, which captures some of the essence and points that are there in the Indian trucking system and the Indian trucks that we have. I'll share my screen to set the context. I have a small presentation and understand that we are short on time in terms of we should give more time to panel discussion. I'll be quick and crisp in covering the points that I want to. So while we are talking about heavy duty vehicle, it's important to understand what is the segment that we are talking about. So heavy duty vehicle segment is basically 12 tonner plus in terms of GVW, which is essentially weight of the empty truck plus the maximum carrying capacity of that truck. India's commercial vehicle segment, of course, we see that it's one of the key diesel consuming sectors, where 40% of the transport sector fuel is consumed by commercial vehicles and buses. Freight activity as we go in future is expected to increase by 5 to 6 times. And as Mr. Rao mentioned, there is a huge benefit if we shift to electric vehicles with a saving of $97 billion in all imports and 7 gigatons of carbon emissions by 2050. Now, before we go into the details of electric heavy-duty vehicles, snapshot on the current market composition. So we see Tata and Ashok Leyland capturing the largest share in the market, in the heavy-duty market. And the domestic sales has been growing significantly, especially since 2014. And there has been a dip in the pandemic years, but it's picking up as we see in the past few quarters. Market composition and in terms of the overall truck size, the market size, we have an estimated 5.5 million trucks, which is about 55 lakh trucks and trailers on Indian roads right now, and which is expected to go beyond 35 millions by 2050. In terms of trucking business that we have, it is, while we are suggesting newer technologies for this particular sector, it's essential to understand the operating needs of India, and whatever technology that we suggest should cater to the need. And in many senses, it is a unique market, and we'll see and hear from Mr. Vineet, who is actually working on ground deploying electric trucks on a higher capacity to run on Indian roads. So again, 95% of fleet owners, we saw that in the 1980s were owned by, had less than 5 trucks, which changed to 75 trucks 75% of the fleet owned by 75% of the fleet owned by truck owners with less than 5 trucks in 2010s. And diesel and tire is the main cost component of the operation in the trucking business, followed by driver costs, insurance premium, and toll taxes. Fleet utilization, as has been reported, is over 75% as of June, and it is increasing because of the higher EXIM traffic and movement of essentials till December 2021. We have been going through shortage of drivers, and we see that, and how we deal with that is also important going forward, especially when the demand is expected to rise. What are the key important ingredients? These are few, but of course these are topics in itself to capture, and hopefully we'll have it captured during the panel discussion. So Sudhendu sir mentioned about the advanced battery technology, how we manage the higher load requirement in the Indian geography is also important. Manufacturing ecosystem, we as in the passenger car and two-wheeler sector, it's largely the new entrants that are playing a major role, and in the HDV market also we see a retrofitment solution being provided by a a relatively newer company, which we'll have later on. Charging infrastructure, Sudhendu sir mentioned, but of course it's need to be catered to the heavy-duty vehicle segment, and how we go about that is also important. We will hear about retrofitment technology, battery disposal scenario, financial structure in terms of supporting the adoption, and in heavy-duty vehicle, it is very different from the current passenger segment or the light commercial vehicle segment that we have in the country, and also how international experience could be brought in to see towards clean truck rule that we have in advanced clean truck rule in California, which positions itself as a manufacturing and export hub. And similar rule have been adopted by several other states, cities, and just states in the US to drive towards manufacturing hub. CalStart's Drive to Zero is another initiative towards commercial vehicles, near zero emission vehicles, and EV100 is another initiative, and Transport Decarbonization Alliance, which is there to drive electrification in the commercial vehicle segment as well. So most of the comments that and inputs that I shared is part of the battery electric technology paper that I was able to write as part of the visiting fellowship at Ashoka University, and this will be available on TERI website soon. As part of the panel discussion, we have shortlisted a few questions, and we'll leave this slide to the panelists and our moderator, Mr. Siddarthan, to carry forward the discussion. With this, I thank everyone, and I'll request Mr. Siddarthan to take over and proceed with the panel discussion. Thank you. Sorry, Siddarthan, you're on mute.
Can you hear me? Great. Good morning. My name is Siddarthan, and I work in ClimateWorks Foundation, which is a philanthropic foundation based in San Francisco, California, which is we are part of a community of foundations, including Shakti and several national, international, and domestic foundations. We are a part of a community. We are trying our best to contribute to the larger efforts of Government of India and several other governments in the energy transition, in a solution to the climate change broadly. That's our role. And thanks to Mr. Sinha for taking time out. Ruchir was briefing as we work closely with Ruchir and Shakti as a partner foundation. Thanks for joining us and also laying out the issues very clearly. I think what the government needs to make it happen. That's pretty clear. I think we have our task cut out. Thanks for it. And Sharif giving us a very compelling statistics in terms of where is a case for it. Before I get into the topics, I would like to really thank Sharif and the TERI team, my colleague Kanchi Gupta from ClimateWorks Foundation, who's again based in here in California, and Ruchir and the Shakti team for their coordinated and intense effort in the last few weeks to design and deliver this panel. And what I would say in the 1 or 2 minutes are basically what I have learned from the panel members, and most of them are close friends, over the past 2 years, when the topic of electrification of heavy trucks was largely on the experimental mode, just 2 years, 3 years ago. And what I've seen over the year or 2 years, the transition from pilot to experiment to commercial viability on the heavy trucks, electrification of heavy-duty vehicle and truck in particular has been dramatic and faster than some of the pace we saw in other segments, which is amazing. And there are good reasons why it is happening. It happened so far. And most important being plain and commercial business opportunity enabled by strong policies and significant public health benefits. In India, the case is even more, I think even stronger, I would say. But still, as Mr. Sinha said, it is a very nascent segment. The global play field is wide open. And it is where I think I see the biggest opportunity for India to become a manufacturing and export hub on electrified heavy-duty vehicle, particularly trucks. The reason being India has already a vibrant EV ecosystem thanks to the incentive structure, the policies like FAME put in place the last few years, and fast evolving infrastructure, which give us really a head start. And what would propel our country in the direction of a manufacturing hub is some enabling supply side policies which would complement the impressive incentives we have on the demand side in other segments. And we will hear a lot about this from the panelists today, so I will not get into the specifics of it. And those policies would give us the business also a new market, both domestic and export at the same time, making India a hub for EV trucks. And I'm not painting an imaginary beautiful scenario. This is happening in real time in country. We have Vineet to say because it is happening. These are rolled out in India, as Mr. Sinha said. It is no more theory, or it's a practical thing happening. And since I live in California, I also have the opportunity of seeing how carefully crafted policies, such as Advanced Clean Truck Initiative California, and incentives can create a new market, drive economic growth and jobs. And I see the potential even vast in our country, in India. So representing philanthropy, as I said, I and my colleagues are committed to work with all of you, as we believe the foundations have an important role as a catalyst in this transition. With those words, let me launch a panel discussion. And thanks, Mr. Rao, for the introduction, saving time, saving my job. That was really helpful. And we have impressive lineup, as Sharif said, representing civil society, think tank, industry, foundations, and of course, coming through Mr. Sinha. And I'll call upon each one of them. We have a set of questions you see in the slide deck as it may be open to the public right now, covering various aspects. And I would request each speaker to choose one or maximum 2 questions from that. And please do say which aspect you are addressing. And please keep it within the 8 minutes of your limits. I would really request to stick to the timeline. And let me begin by inviting my friend and colleague Ruchir Shukla, Director of the Electric Mobility Initiative of the Shakti Foundation. Ruchir, over to you, Ruchir.
Thank you, Siddarthan. And it's great to be here today in this panel discussion. I'll touch upon the first 2 points in the questions displayed here. At the outset, I'd like to thank organizers for giving me this opportunity and sharing my thoughts on this very critical topic, electrification of heavy-duty vehicles, particularly in the context of India's aim of achieving a net zero emissions by 2070, which is announced by Honorable Prime Minister at COP26. Now, considering a short to mid-term kind of a time horizon, I'd like to highlight and touch upon a few points. We all know that transport sector is playing a critical role in achieving India's net zero emission or decarbonization targets. And we must grow and enable economic developments while decoupling it from the negative environmental externalities. There's a real positivity and acceptance of the need of a cleaner, carbon-free transport sector among all the stakeholders. And therefore, it's the right time to talk about electrification of heavy-duty vehicles or introducing zero-emission truck as a segment. All these constitutes higher share because this whole segment constitutes a very high share of diesel consumption as well as carbon emission. The government of India has been working towards the aim of making India a hub for electric mobility solutions, including battery manufacturing. There are various programs at national and state level, including the recently launched ACC, mobility and battery storage initiatives. Light commercial vehicle on one end, we are seeing is taking a quick move thanks to the emergence and promising sectors for this type of vehicle, especially during this COVID time, all that e-commerce rise, last mile deliveries, all these are supporting that. And also the industry leaders, business who have been coming forward, giving commitment of making their fleet 100% electric in short to mid-term, say by 2030. And that's really encouraging. We also know that today, typical diesel truck in India emits close to 1,000 plus tons of carbon over its lifetime. In other words, replacing diesel trucks with zero-emission trucks in India could mitigate collectively, cumulatively, over 5 gigaton of emissions between now and 2050. That's multiple places we have done certain studies and learned this. And therefore, this is one of the biggest opportunity worldwide to abate carbon here in India. Now, electric heavy-duty vehicles, particularly this initiative we are all talking today, would represent a long-term and sustainable economic win for the country as well by lowering the trucking cost close to 30%, creating a globally competitive export industry for us, slashing economic risk by large reduction to all imports bills, and positioning India as well in a low carbon manufacturing hub in auto space. All this ZEV can deliver solutions for very well aligning them to the larger national priorities. And we know that, as I mentioned, the zero-emission trucks or commercial vehicles showing a cost parity with respect to diesel, leaving few points on upfront cost and cost of cash, which are specific to India, which possibly can be bridged through various creative means. Now, rapid deployment, therefore, can eliminate close to $100 billion annual fuel cost by 2050, and most importantly, can save close to 60,000 lives, which are lost annually due to diesel pollution. Zero-emission trucks can also play unlocking clean air, as we all know that, energy self-sufficiency, industrial competitiveness, and meeting international climate commitment by the leadership. On the other hand, we know that with the larger penetration and addition of highways and roads, we are going to be seeing this problem, if not acted upon with the sense of urgency now, will increase in years to come. Also, this particular segment, we all know that in India sees around 10% year-over-year sales growth. with both coming together, sales growth and average kilometer per day run increasing because of much more, better road traffic reach, we are going to be seeing this is compounding a lot. Looking around, most of the times, personally, I see that all stakeholders and leaders generally have made vehicle electrification as overall a signature policy in various ways and means, talking and showing the true commitment. The next 4 year present a window of opportunity with a high likelihood of success in securing a ZET mandate in India. This is derived from various landscape analysis and interviews which we have conducted along with our partners, with OEMs, CEOs, leaders from OEMs, businesses, and government officials. But on the other hand, if the current support to EVs and battery manufacturing falls short to deliver results, there are serious consequences which might seems likely without a true ZEV or heavy-duty truck electrification mandate. The adoption of electric heavy-duty vehicles will be delayed by a decade or so. This will be also going to be a situation where there may be opportunities for other investments like LPG infrastructure and fossil fuel technology pathways taking more shape, and therefore problem will become much complex and serious. All put together, this might lead to adding to confusions and severe stresses among all the stakeholders who are engaging in the transportation sector in India. This will also significantly slow the development of light-duty electric vehicle because a lot of investments, capex, be it also on circular economy of lithium batteries, recycling, a lot of these things are looking at that growth in overall EV ecosystem goes with the expected rate. And as we all know that heavy-duty commercial vehicles are one of the critical enabler, any slow in this side will impact those investments, what are being promised there. Therefore, urgent action needed to capture the opportunity at hand and address the manageable challenges now, then a few years later, when the size of problem becomes huge. I'll pause with this and see if there are any questions. Thank you. Over to you, Siddarthan.
Ruchir, thanks a lot. And I think I admire you for sticking to the time. Spot on. Thank you very much. And you very nicely flagged the opportunities and the risk at the same time. Thank you, Chair. I'm pretty sure I invite and also welcome the participants who we can't hear, but share your question in the chat. We will carefully collect them and post to the panelists. So go ahead and post your question in the chat box. With that, I would like to invite now Divya Sharma, Executive Director of the Climate Group, an institution we all know very well, pretty active in India, playing a very critical role in supporting business in the transition to sustainability in the broad stroke, where electrification of vehicles and now electrification heavy-duty vehicle becoming an important pillar of work. Divya, I wanted to ask you two questions, a bit of paraphrasing the questions already you see on the board. One is, why is electrification of medium and heavy-duty vehicles important for India decarbonization pathway? And what role business have to play? That's one. You can either answer one or two, both, but within the 8 minutes. From Climate Group experience in the sector, how could philanthropy and civil society, which is wide-ranging, support this transition, both at the national and the state level? And what Climate Works experience so far on this? Over to you, Divya.
Thank you, Siddarthan. Both of them are very good questions I would like to speak about, and I'll try to be in my time limit, as you said. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a privilege to be talking on a panel so illustrious. So starting with the first part of your question, Siddarthan, I think the transport sector is the fastest growing contribution to climate change. We've heard from Mr. Sinha and Mr. Rao. and Qamar also made a very good presentation around some of these statistics around why this is important. It is the largest source of emission in countries such as the US, UK, and India. And we feel that accelerated EV uptake is essential to keep the world on a 1.5 degree centigrade Celsius pathway. And given their disproportionate share of GHG emissions, there is a specific critical need for increased ambition and a faster transition for medium and heavy duty fleet vehicles. In India, medium and heavy duty trucks comprise only 2% of the total vehicle population, but contribute to 30% of the overall vehicle road transport emissions, which is disproportionately high compared to their share of the total vehicle population. And the adoption of alternatively fueled electric trucks in particular is currently negligible when we compare ourselves to countries like US, China, and Europe. Um, like the electric transition that is unfolding in the passenger segment, early adoption of electric medium and heavy freight trucking will be propelled by business adoption. We work very closely with businesses, and therefore we can say with confidence that this is important. It is similar to transition that we are driving with corporates throughout our other campaigns, including EV100. And Increasing fuel cost, the imminent withdrawal of concessions for diesel in key industry segments, and increasingly stricter emission norms will make companies begin to consider switching to EVs for fleet. However, it is unlikely that this transition will be fast without clear ambition and also action to build the momentum. And For businesses, you asked me about what are the opportunities for businesses. So there are several opportunities to businesses to make transition in the MHDV segment. With respect to the total car cost of ownership, electric MHDV will reach cost parity with their IC counterpart soon, with conversions varying by type of vehicle and duty cycle. Already, and we were just hearing from Mr. Sinha and also from Shakti Foundation, already total cost of ownership TCO parity has reached for e-trucks with gross vehicle weight greater than 40 tons, and the average distance covered by a truck per day is 200 to 300 kilometers, which is well within the range of new and upcoming electric MHDTs, the models that we see now. And the average truck age, by the way, is around 10 to 15 years. So with the new scrapping policy, fleet operators can be nudged to switch to electric vehicles as battery costs are falling. So basically, we've seen 88% reduction in the last decade. So it must be possible in the coming future. And also, increasing prices should further make e-MHDVs more competitive. Coming down to um our next question on what are we doing in Climate Group and what is the potential for institutions like us and philanthropy. So I would say yes, there is already traction and commitment among civil society members such as Climate Group to support climate action. And needless to say that the transition that we need to make to reach safer levels of global warming would be a multifaceted one, and it will involve various sector leads. It will involve technology providers, government leadership, technical and research assistance, and these endeavors will need dedicated finance to even take up pilot research and activities in new areas such as heavy trucking, electrification. So role of CSO, think tanks and philanthropy has both potential as well as promise. Climate Group India was set up in 2008, and since then we've worked very closely with Indian businesses and governments to encourage leadership on climate change and create a net zero emission world. Our corporate office is located in New Delhi, but our programs are extended in all parts of the country. Now, through networking with the business community, policymakers, medias, and civil society on bold, catalytic, and high profile projects and events, we are trying to show how climate policies and action can support India's continued economic growth and development and provide a future, prosperous future for all with green transition. and sustainable practices and policies. In partnership with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we have developed a comprehensive program of activities that will allow us to deliver on our goal of speeding up the electrification of medium and heavy freight vehicle market in India. The project will leverage our existing business network of EV100 and RE mobility program. This year, we will launch our initiative on medium and heavy vehicle akin to EV100, a parallel initiative targeting medium and heavy truck vehicles, which represent 75% of all fleet transport emissions and 30% of all road transport emissions in India. Our main strategies, just to conclude on my intervention, our main strategies of engagement with the industry will include generating demand for MHDTs through corporate commitments and identifying high impact use cases in beachhead industry sectors such as e-commerce, retail, municipal waste handling, mining, steel, cement, and others, and driving policies engagement with relevant ministries for supporting electrification of MHDTs. Thank you.
Thanks, Divya, again. Well within the time. Thanks a lot. Without further ado, I just going to go and invite Cristiano, director of the Drive to Zero initiative, institute in Colstart, based in the US, who have been working intensely with the industry around the world. Now, since last year, they're also exploring India. They have some interesting insight on what the initiative and institution can contribute to in the sector. Cristiano, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Siddarthan, for the introduction, and TERI for the invitation to participate today. For those of you who are not familiar, CalStart is a US-based clean transportation nonprofit, and we also work of a consortium of over 300 businesses and governments working together to accelerate zero-emission like transportation, and clean technologies for transportation. Like since the early 90s, we worked quite a lot on technology demonstration projects, primarily for zero-emission trucks and buses. We learned a lot through the process when the technology was very experimental. But as technology advanced, so has our work. So today we work not only on the implementation of this project, so gaining real-world experience on how the zero-emission trucks operate in the real world, but also working together with policies, right? So assisting governmental agencies on the types of incentives and the types of regulations that they need to adopt. So the program that I lead, the Drive to Zero program, is a global initiative, is also a campaign of the Clean Energy Ministerial that works together with government and industry and other partners, and it's specifically on the deployment of zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles. Like really with the aim that zero-emission technology is going to be commercially viable in this first wave beachhead applications in leading markets by 2025 and dominate sales by 2040. So I mentioned leading markets, as the 6th largest truck market in the world, India is a very critical region supporting our Drive to Zero goals. And since late 2020, we have been more actively engaged in supporting India's transition to zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles. And from our experience working closely with California, as well as with other global regions, and now touching in like the learnings from international experiences, what we're learning a lot in terms of the successful approach to shift to zero-emission and medium and heavy-duty vehicles. From the California experience, we really need an ecosystems approach. So it comes from a mutually reinforced mix of clear and ambitious targets, and then supporting those targets with strong regulations and targeted incentives. Right? So I mentioned the first wave beachhead applications. This is another important lesson. So we know that these zero-emission technologies will come to the market in waves. Starting with those segments like transit buses that travel along fixed routes, relatively shorter, they return to base for charging. So California's approach has adopted this beachhead strategy, and it really underpins all of their policy ecosystems, regulations, and incentives. So this will be really important for India to develop a similar beachhead strategy targeted and customized for Indian vehicles and applications. And this is recognizing that not all truck segments are going to be electrified immediately. So instead, we need to recognize those applications where zero-emission technologies is most feasible now, focus the immediate policies and investment efforts on those applications, and then develop a strategy for scaling this technology over time to more challenging applications and segments. So working with a consultant like in India, we have conducted an industry assessment and a roadmap towards this transition and developed a beachhead strategy for India. So which is based on real-world duty cycles and modeling that were conducted by our consultant P Manifold. And then we know that there are several truck segments that already have sufficient power and range using existing battery electric technology. So I noticed one question in the chat asking about the role of hydrogen, in comparison with battery electric. So in essence, we don't have to choose. We're going to need a combination of different technologies for different types of applications, but we can already see that battery electric technology can already fulfill a lot of these applications that 5 years ago we didn't think it was going to be possible. But there are a lot of really short, medium, and even some longer distance ranges that battery electric technology can already fulfill. So those already include, for example, for India, like produce trucks, LPG, cylinder trucks, milk and water, tankers, and coal and mineral heavy hauler like trucks. So these are potential wave of electric truck segments. Together, they're responsible for over 18% of total CO2 emissions from trucking in India and can be electrified using existing battery and powertrain technologies that can be taken directly from electric buses, and they're supported by depot charging, so they don't rely on public infrastructure. So it's something that can be implemented in the near term. So also wanted to address some specific challenges here, that while this assessment provides some very exciting opportunities, we're also aware of very specific challenges to electrify the heavy-duty segment that are specific to India. So one, many truck segments in India are very prone to overloading, right? So based on our assessment, there's about 25 to 30% of the medium and heavy-duty fleets that are prone to overloading. And those are prone to, from 50 to 70% of overloading. And this overloading can reduce battery performance and vehicle range and then negatively impact total cost of ownership. So the second challenge, India's truck fleet is very fragmented. So as we've seen on previously on TERI's presentation. So these fleets, they will likely need financing to address the economic barriers to electric truck adoption. And without incentives, without awareness, without other types of demand-side policies, OEMs are going to be unlikely to receive sufficient demand to promote e-truck research and investment. And then the other thing is that usually the conventional truck manufacturing for internal combustion engines, they often include like a somewhat unstructured finishing and fit out process where trucks are sold partially built, and truck buyers will often customize like the cabins and the bodies, mostly via an unstructured and cash-based market. So structuring the manufacturing of electric trucks will need to take this into consideration, and some of the standardization that has happened with electric like bus body designs will also have to happen in for the trucking market as well. So mindful of time, have a lot of other comments, but I'll save some time for the other speakers, and if we have time, I'll make some additional comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruchir, again. Grateful for the time management. And again, a requesting audience whom I can't see, but keep the questions flowing in. We have a very prominent panel who can address several aspects of your questions. So keep coming back in the chat box. I'll invite my friend and dear colleague, Dr. Anup Bandavidekar, Program Officer, Hewlett Foundation. One of the foundations, a lead foundation, and a pioneer in started supporting decarbonization transportation around the world, pretty active and supportive in India for several years through many of our partners, including Shakti. And Anup, as Dr. Sinha said, has been in this for a long time through the International Council for Clean Transportation. He made the switch from a research and analysis job to a groundmaking job, which is a major shift, which is also going to benefit all the stakeholders in India. So Anup, over to you.
Thank you, Siddarthan. Thank you very much. Already, we heard really good comments from Divya and Ruchir and Cristiano. As the audience is thinking about this, if there is one message you want to take home, that it is that electric heavy-duty trucks are here today. They are no longer to be considered as a hard-to-abate sector. 5-7 years ago, this might have been a concern that how are we going to decarbonize this particular sector? But that is no longer the case today. And the vehicles necessary to meet duty cycle requirements are here around the world today. In fact, one of the most interesting experiments that we held last year in the United States was something called as electric run on less. It involved 13 kinds of different vehicles, ranging from day cabs to long hauls to with a cab where the driver has to sleep, or very short urban delivery, a whole host of duty cycles from East Coast to West Coast, with real fleets, with fleets customers like Frito-Lay, DHL, Ryder, Anheuser-Busch, really big fleet companies who need products delivered on time with their actual loads running. 13 of these things ran last year, and the results are now all available online for everybody to see how well these performed. So the key message really in all of that had been that those trucks are here today. But what's more important, we heard in sort of context-setting presentation, the trucking industry sort of suffered from not being such an attractive place to enter. But with these electric trucks, the driving comfort of the trucks is such that it actually encourages people to say, oh, this is a vehicle I want to drive. What we also see is that these trucks, because they will not have any tailpipe emissions, they can go straight inside the warehouses. Loading and unloading becomes different. You don't have to think about all kinds of occupational health and safety concerns for workers who are inside of the warehouses loading and unloading with these trucks. There is a different kind of possibilities in making our logistics more efficient with these electric trucks. And so we should keep sort of those things in mind. In Europe, we are seeing manufacturers commit in big numbers. Everybody from Daimler, Volvo, Scania, MAN Group, Renault, Iveco have made now concrete plans with something like 10% of new vehicle sales to be electric by 2025, and anywhere between, depending upon the manufacturer, between 30 to 50%. Daimler has said as high as 60% of their new trucks might be zero-emission vehicles by 2030. The average European projection currently is in the high 40s. And the situation isn't any different in China, although I should say, and there were questions about hydrogen, but also different kind of charging strategies. That in China, we are seeing actually experimentation happen on different pathways. So battery electric trucks with high power chargers with big battery on board, battery swapping as a concept on electric trucking, and hydrogen fuel cells. As data and evidence is coming, I am personally getting more and more convinced that the big batteries that can be charged relatively quickly, between 30 minutes to 1 hour, are going to win out. And in Indian context particularly, we are not going to require big battery packs that some of the European or American markets will require. So 300 or 350 kilowatt hour of the applications that will be required in the Indian context. But those are the kinds of things that we'll have to evaluate. I think Divya already mentioned in terms of viability economically of these, but certainly there can be incentives added. Currently, India doesn't include heavy trucking in the FAME program. Zero emission trucks will be achieving total cost of ownership parity without any incentives in the next 5 to 7 years. With incentives, that parity can be reached even today. And that's a very significant reason why jurisdictions like California and other places are moving forward with these advanced clean truck type of rules that require manufacturers to make certain fraction of their trucks to be electric. So the largest long haul trucks, the so-called class 7, class 8 tractor trailer trucks in California, by 2030s, around 40% of those new trucks will be required to be electric, and for smaller rigid trucks, as high as 75% of those trucks will be required to be electric drive within 10 years time. So marketplaces like California are moving forward, and several states in the United States are now adopting those. As of today, we have 6 states who've adopted those standards, and there are 9 other states who are actively considering such standards. But California hasn't really stopped just setting standards on manufacturers. It is also requiring specific fleets. As Cristiano mentioned, it's a beachhead approach of identifying specific fleet applications and one by one requiring them to go fully electric, starting with drayage trucks, box trucks or yard trucks, or day cabs and sleeper cabs. Each one of these segments, one by one, will be required to go full electric within the next 10 to 20 year time frame, depending upon which segment of the market it is. So to conclude, what I really want to bring this back at the policy level in India is that we ought to set a meaningful target for zero emission truck sales for 2030, 2035. And in this process, include zero emission trucks and truck charging infrastructure in the FAME scheme. And in fact, the FAME funding could be used at the early stage to have these pilot programs that showcase zero emission trucks under actual operating condition, carrying actual loads, which, as Mr. Sinha said, seeing is going to be believing, that these trucks will actually perform in the real world. And then one final sort of place where we could make it more attractive for zero emission trucks in India is going to be exemptions from road tolls that would further enhance economic feasibility of these trucks in the near term. So with that, let me stop here and look forward to more conversation afterwards.
Fantastic, and a lot of new perspectives. And I was fascinated by the health benefit, not only just the public, which you're right, in the Indian trucking sector, it's so much labor intensive, people oriented one, loading and loading into the Kadwan in the mandis. That's something, and I didn't think about. Thanks for enlightening me on that. We go next to Clay Stranger, Managing Director of Rocky Mountain Institute. Clay is, can sound one of those people I always say, sound and having American name by heart and work. He is Indian. He spent more time than me in the recent years in India, supporting like Mr. Sinha, not only NITI and several ministries, several state governments in making the electrification of transportation agenda as a reality across the board support. So I'm thankful to Rocky Mountain Institute and RMI as being a great partner to all of us. Clay, over to you, Clay.
Thank you so much, Siddarthan, and really, really good to be here this morning and this evening. Honestly, I take pretty significant inspiration on a daily basis from the panelists, from what you write, how you engage, and so definitely an honor to be included. Just a couple of, I think a lot's been said, and I'm in alignment with most or all of it. So just maybe a couple of quick additive points, and I'd love to get to the discussion after the final panelists speak. But I think there's a tendency sometimes to think that we need to start with what's easy or most attainable, right? And we think about two-wheelers, three-wheelers, buses because of their utilization. But I think that we have to kind of take that approach and the opposite approach, right? Which is to start with, Anup says it's no longer a hard to abate, but there are unique challenges in its newness and in its in the deployment of something like zero-emission trucks. But I don't think we don't have the luxury of waiting to say, let's get there when we get there. We have to set this in motion in parallel. So I'm really happy to see this panel happening. And when I think about the title of the panel, like the economic benefit, the economic value of electrifying trucks in India, I actually don't think we need to have a conversation about huge incentives for trucks. We're hearing about total cost of ownership approaching in 3 years in certain markets and applications. In others, it may already be here. So I think what I would think about is how do we speed the transition in an economic and fiscally responsible manner? And I'd like to echo what Dr. Anup said, that one thing we could do immediately with no fiscal outlay is to include trucks in the national mission on transformative mobility and energy storage. I think that alone could send a signal to industry, to stakeholders far and wide, that this is a commitment and an imperative. Further, I think that there's $160 million of FAME 2 incentive that still remains for charging infrastructure. That should be planned and deployed with trucks in mind, right? That will look different than building urban charging infrastructure for Uber and Ola. And there's enough allocation there that if it's thoughtfully deployed, we could start laying the groundwork, at least on certain corridors, for infrastructure to exist where it needs to. A little bit on the benefits of why would we suggest that trucks should be included in the national mission. I really like that the national mission is framed around transformative mobility and energy storage, and we can't separate those two things, right? We could think about electric trucks as trucks powered by batteries, or we could think about them as very large batteries on wheels. And I think it's important that that remains part of the conversation. Some just quick internal analysis that our team did showed that even with modest electric truck adoption in India, we could see annual battery demand as large as 70 gigawatt hours by 2030, 350 gigawatt hours a year by 2040. So trucks alone could fulfill and far exceed the ambition of the energy storage mission. And I think that's just an important thing to hold in mind. Trucks could unlock the energy storage mission and help it succeed. I think also this ecosystem approach is going to be critical. And, fleet owners in India can be nudged to purchase electric trucks, but there also has to be sufficient supply that if they're nudged to purchase those trucks, the trucks actually exist. And the timing and synchronicity of that is critical. A couple of things that we could do to ensure that that synchronicity takes place in terms of creating these advanced market signals for both suppliers and potential customers of electric trucks. One is I think that there's an opportunity for India to really lead globally on the announcement and deployment of a large-scale corridor of zero-emission goods movement. And we'd rely on Cristiano, on Anup, on Divya and others to help us understand where that should be. But given the consolidation of road transport and goods movement, there are definitely places today in India where we could see conversion of most goods movement to electric in the next several years. How might that work? There's a lot of concessional finance and climate finance in the world right now looking for meaningful opportunities. And we heard from Ruchir, this could be one of the most transformative abatement opportunities globally. It will for sure, and already is starting to attract the attention and awareness of some of these sources of concessional capital. With $1 billion of viability gap funding, that's pretty small, actually. It's a large number, but it's small in terms of global climate finance. With $1 billion of concessional capital, we could have viability gap funding for 19,000 electric trucks on a corridor in India and all the required infrastructure. That's enough, actually, to start to tip the markets and create that early market signal. In interviews with some of the heavy-duty manufacturers, we've learned that it's not a huge requirement in terms of what they need to produce each year to dedicate dedicated manufacturing lines to these types of products. It's somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 vehicles per year that a company needs to have assurance that they'll be able to sell in order to build dedicated manufacturing capacity behind that. That is a small number when we start to think about 2-3 lakh MDV, HDV sold in India each year. And so I think one of the things that we could coalesce behind is like, how do we create those advanced market signals? And this, fortunately, we could go to NITI and say, we actually don't need huge incentives to make this work. We need coordinated action. We need an ecosystem approach, and we need to send industry that advanced market signal in a way that allows them to be, I would say, allies and enthusiasts of this transition, knowing that there's a customer on the other side of the table for their product. I think I'll wrap there just by saying that that this is such a big opportunity, and that it happens, I think, by engaging and motivating across actors. And the last thought, actually, is that industry too often is characterized as those who make the trucks. And I think we need to broaden the definition of industry here to include logistics companies, unions of drivers, charging infrastructure providers. There's actually a much broader set of beneficiaries to this type of transition than purely trying to convince the Ashok Lelands, the Tatas, the Mahindras of the world that this is something they should dedicate investment behind. The industry coalition and activity and support is actually a much more diverse set of actors than perhaps always recognized. So with that, I'll pause, look forward to the discussion. And again, thanks so much for including me.
Thanks, Clay. Another set of very compelling numbers, both on the storage side as well as what a small fraction need to create a market and make it reality. And thanks, Clay, for it. And the last point you made it is even more important. This is a people-intensive industry. There's a livelihood element that makes India very distinct from California, other developed market Europe. It's about livelihood. The load is in the mandis. If you go in Delhi, other major cities, it's about people's lives. And they have a better year, better life, ease of driving, ease of movement. And this has that kind of benefit, which is what we call more in terms of equitable benefit. That's a new element of this in only Indian context possible. So thanks for flagging it. Finally, all of us, Vineet brings what we all lack. We all lack. We talk about theory, practice, all that. And Vineet is somebody who make it happen, rolling things out. So it's a final, but I think the big firepower is coming at the end. Vineet Srivastava, as Chief Operating Officer of Info Prime Logistics, who makes what we all talk about in reality. Vineet, over to you, Vineet.
Yeah, thank you. And I will tell you we were also inspired with the EV transformation 3 years before, and we started our journey. And with our hard work and luck, we were able to make a vehicle which is biggest in the planet in terms of load transportation, because it's a 55 ton. In heavy duty, it is the top range in India, which is a 55 ton truck. And we initially made a retro because we split our development program in 2 phases. So it was retro, and then we made a whole new vehicle also. So now we have both the offerings. So we are at a stage where the vehicle is regulatory approved. We have already made sales. But the biggest challenge in this segment is that there are no loans from the banks. So the biggest policy flaw is there is no loan. In diesel truck, if you want to buy, it comes around $60,000 in India, and you can pay $1,000 from your pocket, and then the low financing will happen. But when you are going to buy a EV truck, it is double in the cost, but you have to pay all from your pocket. And as we saw, 75% of the truck owners are less than 5 truck ownership people. So they cannot pay double of the price from their pocket even for a single truck. So in my opinion, the biggest retarding factor is no financing for EVs from any financial institutions. Secondly, this heavy truck does not comes in FAME. So even we do not have any leeway to reduce the price which a client can get from FAME to policies, because the heavy duty trucks are not there. It has only buses. So I feel the biggest challenge, because we have reached to a stage where we have to scale up on the sales, and we see only big corporates are coming to us because they have some green initiatives, they have more knowledge on the subject, and they want to use and feel it. But the deployment is still far away.
Vineet, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
So the biggest challenge is the lending and support from financial institutions to the buyers. So I think on this side, we have to look more on these sides now, because there are entrepreneurs who are taking challenges and they are coming up forward, and definitely there will be more players in the market who will make the vehicle. But if the buyers are not facilitated, then this industry is not going to get maturity as the ICE engine industry has.
Right. Any further points, Vineet?
No, nothing from my side. As I said, we have already made vehicles. We are working on other models, even lower tonnage models. But we have also slowed up our development programs, because with the smaller trucks, the challenges are much more. Because in the big truck segment, these are fleet owners, mostly fleet owners on heavy duty trucks. But on 1 ton, 2 ton, or on the city infrastructure for supplies of FMCG companies, is mostly 1 truck owners are there who are carrying 1 tonner or 2 tonners, and they cannot afford a double price truck when there is no financing available.
Right. Huge. Brad, Vineet, you brought up an important finance. EV finance were taken for granted. The solar had initially started off, then suddenly the finance trouble hit solar, then they realized, scrambled and figured out, what are the risk guarantee mechanism. We made it as a priority sector lending with the RBI, regulation came in. Then angel investor, equity players understood the technology. I think in terms of EV as a technology, it exists. In terms of other segment, it is a question of extending the technology to a new segment in terms of trucks. So I get the point. The financial lending institution to understand the technology, it should be easier compared to the early solar or wind days. And some of us are, Vinith, we can tell you some of the foundation side and partners who are right now in the panel and beyond. We are already grappling with the issue of EV financing as an issue. And we'll be happy to understand more the barriers and address it, how we can do it. The other one you rightly said about the fleet size in India, what is commercial size vehicle in Indian context, and the high capital cost. So the cost reduction in terms of technology development, both in terms of battery weight, battery cost, charging range, overall other material reduction possibilities also happening. And that is where the international experience sharing, whether it is US, Europe, and other countries, where these are important factors in California too. Where I think we will again would like to support the partners on the ground in India, how we can work together. So certainly the points are noted. With that,
Yeah,
I think.
and I will just tell you on these the pricing. See, the real challenge will be on the on the chemistry of a lithium or any other solution, because overall the automotive industry in India is so much matured and cost pressures are so high that the cost will automatically also come down very, very fast. And I am from supply chain background, I know all these stories very well. But the real challenge on the battery is because the lithium formulations for a better performance, those are the only challenges from where the cost can come down, and some manufacturing setups in India. But except battery, all other parts, already team players have came into India and they are setting up their production facilities, and in next 2-3 years, except battery, other things will be localized.
Thanks, Vinay. Thank you. I don't know, Sharif, the meeting will automatically end it in 1 minute, or will it go?
Siddarthan, we can go ahead.
Okay. I see Cristiano addressed one question about hydrogen. If anyone want to even Clay address that. There was a question before that from Khalid from TERI about raw material, and I see the last question from Alexander also more or less. Oh no, that's not the raw material question. Anyone want to address?
Yeah. Let me say a little bit about the raw materials question, and also a very important distinction to make about fossil fuels that we are currently using versus the kind of resources that are going to be necessary for, say, battery electric trucks. And perhaps the most important difference we should note is that resources for combustion vehicles are needed as fuels on an ongoing basis throughout the life of the vehicle, and you have to have constant 24/7, 365 supply of those fuels across the country, all over the place. Critical materials and minerals necessary to make batteries are required during production of the vehicle. Once you made the vehicle, you don't need those supplies anymore. So in terms of actually energy security and supply risks that come with supply of critical minerals materials is far lower. The second part is, unlike fossil fuels, which we'll use up, we will constantly need to dig up more. Critical materials, minerals used in batteries and associated systems can be recycled to a large extent. And Ruchir is here along with Niti, has been doing a great deal of work in bringing the circular economy approach to this particular space. So we should all note that there is work to be done on securing material supplies and doing it in a responsible manner. But compared to the problem of constantly having to secure fuels for our combustion vehicles, this is a way easier problem to deal with. Let's really not worry about that as a problem.
Thanks, Sinu. That's quite useful. There's a question about from parts supply, mostly, how much are the parts you'll be able to source from India, how much is imported? I know, Vineet, can you address that because you're making it?
Yeah. See, in this vehicle manufacturing, totally we are importing around 10 parts, and that is basically battery plus battery cooling system together, and wiring harness also, but we will be developing it in India, but right now we are importing. And DC-DC motor controller and accelerator paddle. So these are parts, but if you will ask from a vehicle, the axle, suspension, chassis, brake system, steering system, instrument cluster, all we developed in India. So in terms of weight, if you will ask, I import around 2.5 tons, and out of that 2 tons is only battery. Out of my vehicle weight of around 10.3 tons. In terms of money, it is reverse. It is 70% import because the battery is at import. And so, but in terms of weight, it is 70-30, 70% from India, 30% import. In terms of money, it is reverse, 70% import, 30% in India. So this is the scenario.
Thanks, Vinay. There is a question about trolley tracks. Is something anyone want to address that? I'm trying to see the link.
I can try to address this question, and in terms of what the underlying message there, that if we look in a very comprehensive view of a freight system, we should not be thinking about trucks and rail competing with each other, but they attend different needs, right? And then the backbone, there are going to be certain commodities that are more efficient being transported by rail, and they should still be transported by rail because there are a lot of economic efficiencies already included in that. So we should not be looking at electric trucks replacing rail. The two can really coexist and tackle different types of commodities and corridors. In terms of and even for the trucks themselves, there are going to be different technology pathways. And I think that what has really changed dramatically, from 5 years ago to where we are today, is how fast battery technology has advanced, and then how they can attend not only near-term or short distance ranges, but medium distance and some long distances as well, right? We're going to have some role for other technologies, for hydrogen, obviously for the very long distance ones. But the biggest lessons learned, and I completely agree with Anoop here, is that we've seen a dramatic improvement in battery electric technology, their ranges and reductions in cost parity, right? So all of the studies show that every single battery electric truck application will achieve cost parity without incentives by 2030.
Including in India, the latest assessment you've done yourself, Christiana, with the partner.
Absolutely.
Not just outside India, within India. Okay, Sharif, we are 6 minutes over the time, so please advise. Should we wrap up? Or I just want to ask the panelists, any of them missed out any points you want to flag? 1 minute. Clay, Ruchir, anyone? A minute. If you think if you want to.
In 1 minute, a couple of quick things. One is, I think that clear call about the financial products or loans not existing for electric trucks rang true. And I think we don't just need loans, we need competitive loans, because if you start to look at a 20% interest rate, you're going to erode any of the operational savings that an electric truck can deliver. Two, on the battery performance improvement, we've just got some data out of the city of Pune that shows that the electric buses operating in the city are actually on track to perform 2,000 charge cycles as opposed to the 1,100 they were expected to deliver. This totally changes the economics, and it basically means that each bus will save the city about $90,000 in fuel costs. When you multiply that by 500 buses, you're starting to talk about significant savings at the municipal level. So really excited to see that. The same should be true for trucks. Like, I think the rated performance of these batteries is going to surprise and exceed. And the third was just on hydrogen, which is that I'm not a huge fan of needing to choose. I don't think we need to choose. Let's talk about zero emission trucks. A lot of signals show that battery electric trucks are ahead, but I would not feel comfortable or even feel that we need to create any sort of tension or unnecessary selection. Let's let the market decide. You know, like if hydrogen catches up and performs, or if there's certain applications where it can be really effective, so be it. But let's not let the choice or the trade-off between battery electric or hydrogen be a reason to delay the prioritization of the of advancement of zero emission trucking. So that's my final thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Clegg. You know, I'm not going to wrap up because for two things, there is absolutely nothing I'm going to add beyond what the panelists said. Number two, I'm conscious of the time. So, Sharif, over to you, Sharif. Ruchir, unless you want to say something?
Yeah, it will be interesting, just to add few points. At the present time, we know that securing a mandate to increase sales, so we need to really work simultaneously on both, supply side and demand side. That's one thing which we covered. Could be as an actionable thing. Maybe we can look at that as another workshop where we can really lay down precisely a year-based target and say 4 to 5 years based targets is something which I guess will be really meaningful for our key stakeholders from policies to really take the movement to next step. And what it comes to my mind, say, for example, taking as a 4-year action plan, which can be like making India achieve a kind of a global front runner in transitioning to zero emission for heavy duty vehicles. So let's have India reaching to, getting identified, say, 5 different corridors where we want to really run the pilots. That decision should happen in such a way that these things can really start mobilizing the resources. India also establishes a ambitious 100% zero emission trucks target, say 2047, with some interim milestone for 25, 30 or 40. Same way we encourage our manufacturers to establish concrete plans to increase their sales in line with government targets. Ensure financing and incentive schemes really merge and solve the pain point, which truly highlighted well by no other than Vivek directly coming and making their P&L and salaries come through the business. So it is very, very important. In a 1-year immediate target, we can quickly look at it, creating a quick group, which I just spoke, which can really sit together, do all the brainstorm, engage, leadership can come from, say, Ministry of Road Transport, Highways, DHI and NITI, and we run the campaign, around the same time to build more awareness around all sorts of stakeholders, including the fleet operators, so that when we are looking at 4-year plan, this gets in properly gelled with. These are a couple of my thoughts as a closing remark. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Over to you, Sharif, because I know we are overshot ourselves. Take over the proceedings and wrap it up. Sharif, from my side, thanks a lot for the panelists. As ever, I have more learning for me. I hope it was productive, and we will work together.
Thank you, Siddarthan, for conducting a very efficient panel discussion and informative one too. So at TERI, when 4 years back when we started working on freight, and we went to the ground and talked to the stakeholders, they were interested, but there wasn't any supply, especially in the urban freight, low capacity vehicle segment. But 2 years down the line, there were a few players that really rolled out their vehicles in the EV segment. Similar is the case now when we started talking about the HDV sector, and we are doing a work with a multinational FMCG company in India, which wants to undertake come up with a roadmap for electrification of their primary and secondary supply chain, from manufacturing unit to distribution, and then distribution to the retail hubs. So that is work in progress, and I hope that in the time to come, months and weeks, we see developments in the electric HDV sector, where particularly from the financing as well as the rolling stock point of view. So yeah, thank you to the speakers, particularly for a very informative discussion. Thanks to Shakti and Climate Works Foundation for supporting this thematic session. I look forward to exploring and research on more electric freight sector related work, and also look forward to the audience to participate and speakers to participate in the plenary and thematic sessions that are going on at the WSDS between today and tomorrow. On that note, thanks a lot, and have a nice evening and day. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good day.
Good night and good day.